Russia has reiterated the proposal to host a meeting between the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan to seek a solution to the armed conflict in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The United States slapped fresh sanctions on Iran's financial sector in an effort to further choke off Tehran's revenues. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Venezuela, where the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, has highlighted the economic impact of the US blockade against the nation, which has reduced the country's oil turnover to 1%. He stressed that this reality justifies President Nicolas Maduro's proposed anti-blockade legislation.
Then the president has made this proposal, and today we hope that in this National Constituent Assembly, we can provide the President Nicolas Maduro to make him face the blockade with a legal instrument to continue to fight, and not only to face it, but to maneuver it.
And following a debate, the National Constituent Assembly approved the anti-blockade law for national development and the guarantee of human rights.
And the constituents, having read the anti-blockade law for national development and the guarantee of human rights, all its articles, from 1 to 44, its transitional provisions, its final provisions, the constituents who agree to approve this bill presented by our brother President, Nicolas Maduro, do it with the sign of custom. The anti-blockade law is formally approved by the Constituent National Assembly, with the help of the constituents who were elected by the people. We were elected by the people with a very special power. We are sure that from this moment begins a new stage in the life of our homeland.
The Cuban government has announced a series of new measures linked to the COVID-19 pandemic and the updating of the national economy. Addressing the nation, President Miguel Díaz-Canel and Prime Minister Manuel Marrero Cruz referred to three main fronts of ongoing efforts: the confrontation of the pandemic, the denunciation of the US blockade and financial persecution against the country, and the implementation of the economic and social strategy. The Prime Minister noted the effective strategy adopted to combat COVID-19, while the President emphasized that 52 Cuban medical brigades have been sent across the world to combat the pandemic. It was stressed that the US blockade has been tightened under the Trump administration, with constant attacks on the country's main sources of hard currency income, health, tourism and remittances, among others. Regarding the new economic and social strategy, the President reiterated that it was approved with the objective of addressing pending issues and boosting the economy in a post-COVID-19 situation. As part of these moves, it was necessary to introduce an undesirable partial dollarization of the economy, while the unification of the country's dual currencies remains a pressing need. And the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel noted the government's strategies taken to curb the spread of COVID-19 across the country.
It is clear to everyone that the Cuban strategy to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been a strategy based on the experience of the revolution in the health field, on the experience we have also acquired through the participation of our health collaboration in other parts of the world, to the contribution of the Cuban scientific community, and the joint effort among mass and political organizations in broad sense, and that of our health system. It has been an effective strategy, and it has been a strategy with results.
On Thursday, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, announced that the country would hold general elections on November 5th. The Prime Minister made the announcement following a meeting with representatives of his ruling Unity Labour Party. Meanwhile, Gonsalves is set to contest the elections for a fifth consecutive term while running against opponents from the main opposition New Democratic Party, led by Goodwin Friday. The general elections will determine the 15 seats of the country's parliament, where the ruling Unity Labour Party secured a one-seat majority in the previous election held in December 2015. In Bolivia, supporters of the right-wing presidential candidate Carlos Mesa have mobilized in various parts of the country. Mesa, who was involved in the coup against President Evo Morales last year, has received the support of de facto President Janine Áñez, who dropped out of the race to increase his chances of winning. However, all of the polls ahead of the October 18th general elections continue to place him behind the candidate for the movement towards socialism, Luis Arce. Meanwhile, in a surprise move on Wednesday, the Nationalist Democratic Action Party withdrew its candidate, Maria de la Cruz Baya, claiming it anticipated electoral fraud, in a move much like that which preceded last year's coup. This came as political analysts expressed the belief that the right wing of the country were preparing to refuse to recognise the October 18th election results. Colombia's Attorney General's office has requested the lifting of the house arrest warrant issued against former President Álvaro Uribe on August 4th, who's under investigation for witness tampering and procedural fraud. Representing the Attorney General's office, Colombian prosecutor Gabriel Jaimes submitted a request to the Judge of Guarantees No. 30 while arguing that the preventative measure had no legal validity due to a change to the judicial process from Law 600 to Law 906, as was previously noted by the Supreme Court. Former President Uribe is being investigated for over 200 open cases, including on charges of corruption, human rights violations, bribery, witness tampering and procedural fraud. Meanwhile, he's due to attend court this Friday to request the lifting of the house arrest ordered by the Preliminary Investigations Chamber. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Russian authorities reiterated the proposal on hosting a meeting between the foreign ministers of Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan in order to seek a solution to the armed conflict in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. If agreed, the official talks would also include representatives from the Minsk Group and the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe.
We consider different scenarios of the conflict resolution in Nagorno-Karabakh. We have proposed to make Moscow a platform to organize a meeting between foreign ministers of Russia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, with the participation of the Minsk Group of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. We are holding consultations with parties regarding the possible time for them to start the negotiations.
Non-governmental organisation Frontline Defenders has awarded human rights activist Mekfoula Mint Brahim with its Africa Award for her work in promoting women's rights in Mauritania.
To win a prestigious award on behalf of 52 African countries is an extraordinary thing. It is a recognition of the work I am doing by an international institution that was following what I was doing without my knowledge. A work ignored by many people, carried out under difficult conditions in remote corners of Mauritania. I was a victim of an assassination attempt and I was imprisoned. There are daily smear campaigns against me and people flee from me. These campaigns fueled parlor discussions in a vile way because I dared to speak out at a time when women are not allowed to speak.
Following an official visit to Ireland on Thursday, President of the European Council, Charles Michel, reiterated the bloc's support for the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, included in the Brexit withdrawal agreement signed with the United Kingdom.
As in any such negotiation, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. The coming days are crucial. This is the moment of truth, and there is on Brexit. My message is simple. The EU stands in full solidarity with Ireland, and this is especially true when it comes to the full implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. This text.
The situation remains very challenging. There needs to be movement in terms of getting it to end stage negotiations, and we feel there's a lot of work to be done yet on a number of fronts.
French authorities have pointed out that the coronavirus situation is deteriorating across the country, while urging to activate emergency measures to cope with the fast rising numbers of COVID-19 patients in the Paris region.
First of all, an epidemiological overview. The sanitary situation keeps on deteriorating in France, unfortunately. It's also the case in many neighboring countries. Some areas in a more deteriorated sanitary situation than ours, and some other countries have been facing a resumption of the epidemic, unfortunately, for the past few days or weeks. For these 4 cities, Lille, Grenoble, Lyon and Saint-Étienne, a placement under maximum virus alert has been decided by the President of the Republic during a Defense and National Security Council. This placement will be effective from Saturday morning. It means that the number of COVID-19 patients in ICU in Parisian hospitals is increasing, and the sanitary pressure is getting heavier in the hospital of Paris and its region, imposing the cancer some medical acts.
Authorities in Croatia have urged the population to adopt preventative measures in the face of the rising number of COVID-19 cases across the country. Health authorities recorded the highest ever daily increase in new cases on Thursday at 542.
Today we registered a record daily number of new cases since the start of the pandemic, 542. That is up by 179 cases compared to yesterday. When we put this in a broader global context, it should be noted that over 36 million people worldwide have been infected so far, and more than 1 million have died as the result of the coronavirus infection. I present all this so that we as a society will understand that this virus is a serious threat to our health and lives, a serious threat. Relativizing and underestimating the virus produces concrete consequences such as non-compliance with protective measures and irresponsible behavior which jeopardize public health and economy. Let me stress, science needs time to find solutions, and we should give it that time. We should follow the guidance of our crisis response team rather than politically motivated guesses and unfounded unprovided advice.
Demonstrations were seen in the US city of New York for a third night on Thursday to protest COVID-19 lockdown measures imposed in some neighborhoods that have recorded steady spikes in new cases in recent weeks. Local residents blocked the streets in Brooklyn's Borough Park neighborhood while claiming that the New York state is unfairly targeting Orthodox Jewish communities, as some of the areas subject to the restrictions that would close non-essential businesses and schools and limit the size of religious gatherings are home to large Jewish populations. Meanwhile, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has stressed that the measures adopted are based on science and data and apply to COVID-19 clusters in areas that have disregarded the rules put in place to curb the spread of the virus. Photos and videos of the Wednesday night protest showed crowds dancing in the street and waving campaign flags for President Donald Trump. The restrictions also come amid the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, thus contributing to the anger of members of the Orthodox community. According to a local newspaper, Japanese authorities are planning to remove a current ban on overseas travel to China and 11 other countries and regions starting next month. The 11 other nations include Taiwan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, Vietnam and Malaysia. Japanese authorities have maintained travel bans on 159 countries and regions, while easing entry restrictions for foreign medical professionals, teachers and others who qualify for medium or long-term stays of 3 months or more. Meanwhile, other issues include the permission for Japanese and foreign national business travellers with residency status to re-enter the country without having to isolate for 2 weeks. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United States has slapped fresh sanctions on Iran's financial sector, targeting 18 banks in an effort to further choke off Tehran's revenues as Washington ramps up pressure weeks ahead of the US presidential elections. The move freezes any US assets of those blacklisted and generally bars US citizens from dealing with them, while extending secondary sanctions to those who do. This means foreign banks risk losing access to the US market and financial system. In response, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif accused the United States of targeting the country's ability to pay for basic necessities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Tensions between the two nations have soared since Trump unilaterally withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal struck by his predecessor and began reimposing sanctions that had been eased under the accord. On Thursday, Palestinian authorities condemned the Israeli regime's decision to demolish a school located in the occupied West Bank city of Ramallah. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Israel has already demolished more than 500 structures in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip this year.
School was built. We used to study in Al-Mughayr village, and when this school was built, it was a lot closer and better for us. The Jews came, wanted to demolish it, and when we heard that news, we were very sad. Everyone here was happy with this school despite the basic and incomplete construction. When they came to the school, they were very happy, as if they got everything they wanted and more. But now, with the challenges we are facing due to the army and the settlers, our only wish has become that this school remains, because the army and settlers have started coming daily, filming and harassing us.
This school served the students and the situation got better. I hope it remains. You see how the enemy has been targeting it from the beginning of the construction, and the Israeli army is chasing us. So are the settlers. We build it in difficult conditions. We will go at night to build the school and run away several times when the Israeli army and the Israeli civil administration will come. The settlers are building and setting out barracks behind this mountain. The settlers have barracks on a land of about 100,000 meters squared, and there are no restrictions or prohibitions for them, while for us, it's forbidden to do anything.
Demonstrators mobilized in the Israeli capital Tel Aviv on Thursday to protest the mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The protesters blame the Prime Minister for the daily increase in COVID-19 cases, which is aggravating the health crisis, and want that hospitals face collapse. They're also blaming the PM for the economic crisis sparked by the health emergency, claiming that his measures have protected business sectors to the detriment of the population. Protesters have been calling for Netanyahu to resign as he faces corruption charges, including breach of trust, accepting bribes and fraud. The United Nations Security Council is set to consider a proposal by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to hold an international peace conference. According to Palestine's permanent observer to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, the UN Security Council will convene a public debate session in late October with the aim of analysing details related to the initiative. The Palestinian president has called for United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to convene an international conference early next year to launch a genuine peace process between Israel and Palestine, after having rejected the peace proposal unveiled in January by US President Donald Trump, in which illegal Jewish settlements in occupied Palestinian territories would be recognized as part of Israel. President Abbas urged Guterres to work with the Middle East Quartet of mediators, the United States, Russia, the European Union and the United Nations, and the UN Security Council on a conference with full authority and with the participation of all concerned parties. United Nations officials have expressed concern over the political situation in Kyrgyzstan, while urging the population to uphold the rule of law and continue to exercise restraint and refrain from violence.
Representative for the Secretary General for Central Asia, Natalia German, has been following the situation very closely and is in touch with senior Kyrgyzstani officials to explore ways in which the United Nations can assist the country in finding a peaceful resolution to the current situation. The resident coordinator is also in touch with the authorities in Bishkek, and until a negotiated solution is reached, we urge Kyrgyzstanis to uphold the rule of law in the country and continue to exercise restraint and refrain from violence.
European Union officials and African Union representatives held an official meeting in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa this Thursday to strengthen cooperation to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. The event saw the donation of 900,000 COVID-19 test kits to the African Union, representing the third and last batch of the 1.4 million kits donated by the EU's largest economy, Germany.
First of all, on equitable access, the European Commission has demanded that vaccine should be once it is available, it should be treated as a global public good, meaning there should be equal access and equitable access ensured for all, not just for those who can pay more. That's first point. Second point, a large number of people all over the planet will need to be vaccinated if we want to check this pandemic.
The rape and murder of a 19-year-old woman in Algeria has sparked an outcry for action on gender-based violence in the North African country.
This government that offers no shelters or mechanisms to protect the victims from their torturers, this government that says it has laws, but in reality women are asked to forgive their aggressor, be it their brother or their father or whatever. Women file a complaint and wait 3 or 4 years for it to be resolved or for a judgment to be rendered. These are unacceptable conditions. Algeria is for Algerian men and women. A stop to the silence that kills, to the laws that kill, laws that protect rapists who can go out to kill. A stop to crime in general for Sheima and for the Sheimas around the world. I say a stop, let's mobilize, let's not let it happen again. Let this silence stop and let this society begin to understand that the problem is in the culture of violence.
Security Council on Thursday, the permanent representative of Mali to the United Nations reaffirmed the commitment voiced by the transitional government to implement the agreement for peace and reconciliation in the country.
The organization of credible elections that can lead to a return to constitutional order depends on political, institutional, electoral and administrative reforms as set out in the Transitional Charter. In the prevailing context in Mali, it seems to me very important to reassure once again all of our partners that our national authorities remain determined to respect all the national and international commitments to which Mali has freely subscribed in accordance with the principle of continuity of the state. In this regard, I would like here and without any ambiguity to reiterate the determination of the authorities of the transitional to continue relentless the diligent implementation of the agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali.
And on Thursday, the Office of Radio and Television of Mali announced the release of opposition politician Soumaïla Cissé, as well as that of a French aid worker and 2 Italian hostages who were believed to have been held by jihadist groups.
His Excellency Mr. Va Ndao, President of the Transition and Head of the State, Colonel Assimi Goïta, Vice President of the Transition, Mr. Mokhtar Ouen, Prime Minister and Head of Government, the Government of the Republic of Mali and the President of the Task Force for the Liberation of the Honorable Soumaïla Cissé, informed the nation and the world of the liberation of Mr. Soumaïla Cissé, President of the Union for the Republic and Democracy Party, UDR, of Ms. Sophie Petronan, citizen of France, and Mr. Nicola Ciaccio and of Mr. Pier Luigi Miacali, citizens of Italy.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.